Hello and welcome to another Mental Wealth Moves podcast by your host, Casey Dubravcic, owner and operator of Revitalize Ketamine Clinics, ROHCT Wellness Bar, and co-founder of Epik Biosciences. In today's episode, Casey and Cayce talk TMS, rapid transcranial magnetic stimulation. Who is it for? Why it works, who should consider it, a little bit also about Casey's origin story and some of his ethos going into treatment of all mental health disorders. It's a great, candid conversation that talks about how to become your best self.
And what got you into the field of mental health?
My name's Casey Dubravcic. I'm the owner and operator of Revitalize Ketamine Clinics with my wife, Jill Dubravcic. And we're up here in Flagstaff, Arizona. We also have clinics in Sedona and Prescott Valley. We just recently started offering TMS in our Flagstaff and Prescott Valley locations. And yeah, it's super awesome to be able to provide such a valuable service in addition to kind of our wheelhouse, which is ketamine infusions. So I've been in healthcare since 2004. Was in ICU, CDICU, pre-op PACU, and then I thought I wanted to be a certified registered nurse anesthetist, and then I spent a bunch of time in the operating room and realized you have to really like your coworkers to be able to stay in that, literally sterile environment. And I actually found my love for psychiatry and mental health while I was working in the ICU, because you could actually, while your clients were, pretty much vented and sedated, they weren't great to talk with. It's kind of a one-way conversation. It's kind of morbid sense of humor that we get from working there. I was able to ease some of that burden working with their family and their loved ones. And that was incredibly rewarding work, just being able to hear some of their stories and sit with them. And so really found, kind of my passion for mental health in that environment. Worked in the inpatient, outpatient units at the behavioral health unit, trained electroconvulsive therapy, and worked at the community mental health center or inpatient, outpatient units there, and worked in, I was the only child provider for a couple of years. And, I was providing long-acting injectables and, all sorts of polypharmacy, and recognized really that, in large part, like depression, anxiety, a lot of these symptoms are based in trauma. And so being able to help people kind of explore that and you need to feel it to heal it. And so being able to really expedite that process and provide a safe place to do it. There's so much moves right now for psychedelic medicine. And ketamine's here now, and it's legal and it's safe, and really fired up on the transcranial magnetic stimulation as well, because there's no medication needed for that, and really helps people get to where they need to be. There's also some cool evidence coming out about the human optimization protocol. Tim Ferriss just had the TMS on his 4-hour work week guy, and so that was super cool. And yeah, I'm just excited to be here. I always say in mental health field, takes one to know one. So yeah, I've been through my own stuff. Like grew up, kind of bounced around. I lived in something like 50 something houses with my parents before I was 18, and lived out in my car for a number of times with my parents, and it was fine, like lots of love in the household, just not a ton of money consistently. We had fun though. It was always fun with my wife. So and that helped me be more outgoing, because you just got to make friends when you're moving to new places kind of constantly. Yeah, no, I love it. My wife and I are having a lot of fun running the practices. We got 3 kids, 10, 11, and 13, and they're like my favorite humans, hanging out with them yesterday and today, and we just do all sorts of fun stuff. So I really like what I'm
awesome.
doing.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for the background. And yeah, the take one to know one. It's like, I always think it's not a prereq, to be in mental health, but the good ones seem to have gone through some shit. The good ones, the relatability, it's something you can't go to school for, and you can't, it's just so
it's the school of hard knocks, right?
Yeah. Well, your patients are lucky to have you, for sure.
Thanks, Casey. Appreciate you.
For sure. Likewise. Yeah, so what made you choose the Blossom device specifically when you're you're looking for devices other than the
Well,
cool sales dude.
right. I know the sales guy is amazing. And I do want to say, that was one thing, fretful of with any sort of big capital investment.
Mm.
So you hear like, what's the best way to get a capital salesperson to not talk to you is like buy the capital. Right. And that has not been the case at all. So I just want
Yeah,
to, say that the after has been amazing and I really appreciate you for that
thank you.
and your company that you're representing by proxy. Um,
Yes.
and then I would say, the I did interview quite a few other, companies. I looked at MagStem, I looked at BrainSway, I looked at Neurostar. And there's a reason we went with Sebers Medical and the Blossom TMS in particular. For one, it is workhorse, it's oil cooled, just seems really beefy. I really like that the CEO is a clinician or not a clinician, but he's really like on the brass tacks of things. Like he understands what makes a good TMS machine.
Hmm.
Obviously, you've got to kind of gauge all the different aspects of implementing a new service into your practice. And so, I'm a big proponent of the TMS technology in general. And so I knew I was going to do something. I just didn't know who I was going to work with. And so it was just kind of fortuitous that I came across Blossom because you don't hear about it nearly as much, and I'm sure that's
Hmm.
the advertising dollars that go into the other bigger ones. But then you end up paying for their advertising, and so
True. Yeah.
so it's a great machine. I really like working with it. The arm is super solid and really easy to work. It's got theta burst, which is awesome. A lot of other companies don't have theta burst, so that'll really open up a lot of different options for the human optimization and off
Hmm.
cash pay. And so yeah, I'm super happy with our purchase.
Wonderful, wonderful. And what's your experience been like so far offering TMS? Like,
It's been good. Yeah.
how's it going?
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Good. We're definitely ramping up on interest. I think
Hmm.
a lot of the people that are going to qualify for our ketamine treatments also will qualify for transcranial magnetic stimulation, probably even more so. And so being able to get people in where they can drive themselves and, pretty
Hmm.
short appointment in the grand scheme of things and pretty inobtrusive. I think it's just a really great treatment modality that can quite literally change your mind. And so, a lot more interest on it. I think there's more and more kind of knowledge about it coming out, and people are so interested in alternative modalities right now. I think personally, I would want to do treatment like TMS, far before like traditional monoamine modulation. That being said, I understand that a lot of insurance companies are, the prior authorization process does necessitate failed past medication trials. And so,
Right.
those are waters you have to navigate. And I think
Yeah.
there's going to be more and more evidence coming out about, going even possibly first line treatment.
Hmm. Yeah. I would love to see that happen at some point. You've hit upon this a little bit already in different aspects, but maybe a little bit more explicitly. What do you like about TMS? Uh, d- uh, in regards to TMS versus all the other treatments out there, but whether it be pharmacology, therapy, like the ketamine that you do. What do you like about TMS specifically? Little pieces of it that you like better
Yeah, for
than
sure.
others. Yeah.
Yeah, great question. So, I think it's a super exciting time to be in medicine because we're actually proving past wisdom with science. And you
Mm,
look back, on some of the historical things that they were doing, they were navigating certain areas of the world and they were trying to, so people have understood that there's resonance energy for a long time, sound healing, singing, these types of things. And TMS is just a really focalized
mm,
version of a resonant type healing. And so, being able to like it's one of our practitioners in Sedona, she says that, that it really resonates with a lot of people, and I can agree with that. It's like we're at that time in medicine where we're blending the sacred with the science. And
mm,
so being able to offer transcranial magnetic stimulation as an alternative treatment modality. So many people are turned off by meds at this point. And there's so much evidence, honestly, to support that, with the monoamine theory basically being debunked. We know the more avenues you address a problem from, the more likely you are to get capture. And I poo-poo it a lot. That being said, there's a great place for daily medications when there's aspects of your situation that you cannot change, for whatever reason. So like having a daily med so you can get out, makes sense. That being said, like I said, if TMS was available for more people easier, I think people are going to jump on that bandwagon a lot quicker. Like what, like 5 or 6 weeks and I could be done for the rest of my life, or years before I need to come back again, or maintenance treatments every 1 to 3 months. Like that's huge for people to be able to drive themselves to and from the appointments. Not having any sort of medication be introduced is a big thing for a lot of people, and again, I don't blame them. The side effect profile for SSRIs, SNRIs, mid-sequelators, antipsychotics, benzodiazepines, and the addiction potential, from a cellular level, is something that should be considered when, and medicine, we don't get that like strong aversion. It's like diagnose, then prescribe, and then follow up, and it's like, should we be going that fast to these things that are doing neuromodulation, that aren't like stoppable and have like such a gnarly side effect profile? Like TMS, like everyone's been tolerating it really well. And like I said, it's just like this super localized, non-pharmacological treatment that people are loving and has a ton of science to back it up.
And how's the experience been? There's kind of one of the unique aspects about ketamine too, but also TMS, is that the patient comes to you and they're in your environment. And I've seen your environment; it's super cool. You guys have just a great vibe, like where you are is very, very positive. And I felt visiting your clinic that it's a very therapeutic environment, just being in the presence of what you set up there. And what's been that experience of having people in, so you're giving them the medicine, if you will, in real time right there with you, with you guys, right, with your team. What's that experience been like?
Yeah, so like, again, holistic care, right? Try to meet people where they're at. And I think we're in a unique and beautiful position. People come from all over the world to visit Flagstaff, in Sedona as well, like really kind of natural wonders of the world.
True.
And so we're super lucky to be up here and be able to provide, such a wonderful healing modality and modalities. Very passionate about both the ketamine and the TMS, obviously. In such a beautiful, like, healthy environment for people, being able to go outside and quite literally hug a tree.
Yeah.
Outside and just be in nature so quickly and be able to experience that. It's kind of continuation of a lot of things.
Yeah, and one provider said, like, and I kind of felt this too, where sometimes you're not quite sure if the patient is coming for the medicine or the treatment, or to be around the positivity. Like they might not have that positivity like in their world, and it's therapeutic to be there. Like I think one hurdle, one hurdle people think is a hurdle is, oh, I have to come in every day, or like 36 sessions 5 days a week for TMS. And then you notice, like, oh wow, but they want to come in. Like once they start coming in, they're like, I actually want to come in. Like this is quite nice.
Right.
Where if you're prescribing medication, let's say from that standpoint, it's here you go, take this, and then you don't really see
Yeah.
them until the check-in.
Right. And
It's
then
kind of
the
interesting.
check-ins, yeah. It's so like not therapeutic to, a good, healthy kind of human interaction. Like TMS naturally is, we're obviously noticing for side effects, and, we talk a little bit about that. And it really is, like toxic positivity, right? Where you're just like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, like you got this
Yeah.
person who's excited for you and cheerleading you in your space, while you're, hopefully cautiously optimistic. That's what I try
Hmm.
to, get my
Yeah.
clientele. It's like, yeah, we're hopeful. Like there's
Yeah.
no guarantees with these treatments. And we know, it takes like 2 weeks to notice much of anything. And so
Hmm.
you've got to kind of believe in it enough to show up.
Right,
And
right.
with med management, oh my gosh, like med management is just kind of exhausting, right? Like any thoughts hurting yourself, thoughts hurting the people, any hallucinations, delusions,
Hmm.
substance abuse, any hospitalizations, any side effects, it's just like you ramble off all these questions. And then like 20 minutes later, you're on to the next person and you're like, okay, what did I give them? It's
Right,
just like, I work
right.
in the community mental health center, it's like 15 to 30-minute appointments, and you're just like, you
Just
can't get to
boom.
know people either, so
Yeah,
that's what's nice about having like a TMS clinician where you're hanging out in the room with that client for the whole 20, 30 minutes, and you get to know them and talk about them and their family and their situation and what else they're doing. It's a great
yeah,
opportunity to talk about augmentation strategies and talk about lifestyle and and kind of cheer them on, like, "Yay, what's good for you is good for the
yeah,
universe," right?
yeah.
Yeah.
That's so cool. Um, and I think it's also interesting where the actual medication, if you will, like in this, it's not medication, but the actual treatment, um, their schedule. So maybe I don't know if you had talked anything about that. It's kind of unique. In other words, if you say, take two of these a day and whatnot, it's out of your hands as far as, if something is dose dependent and you're not quite sure exactly what the doses have been and whatnot. So it's fairly unique with TMS where you're there if they miss a day. Okay, everybody knows they missed a day or something like this. A different experience. I don't know if you could speak to that a little bit about just being part of the actual program so intimately.
Yeah, for sure. It's that's the thing. I think it goes down the medication compliance by like 40%, like every
Right.
time you add a new medication onto a patient's medication profile. And
Mm,
you get like twice a day or 3 times a day, and it goes down even further dramatically. And
yeah.
yeah, you speak to a great point. With TMS, we know when someone's showing up and we know when they
Yeah.
aren't.
Yeah, right.
And
Yeah.
you playing an active part too, by driving yourself, by showing up, by being physically and mentally and spiritually present, for
Hmm.
the provider and being able to provide feedback. And, like I always want to empower my clients to feel like they're driving their bus, because they
Right.
ultimately are. I was listening to a podcast the other day. It's like, I'm not in the camp of convincing. Like, I'm here to like give you those tools, and I'll be your resources and I'll be your cheerleader. And, that being said, like, I'm not going to convince you that you want to get better. Like, people are showing up because they do want, their situation to be better. Like with traditional mental health, it's more like, oh, this person told me I should go. It's like,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, it's like you inform them and then yeah, as I think especially too with TMS where there's so much like showing up to do. But
Yeah.
then informing them because it is newer to it's not new. It's not a new technology at all, but it can be new to them. So just yeah, informing them and then I think TMS sells itself once you get the nuts and bolts of it. You're like, wow, okay, I stay on all my medication. If I'm on medication, I don't need to get off of it. I don't need to change it. Um, and there's no real side effects of TMS and
Mhm.
non-invasive, non-systemic, doesn't go through the whole body. It sells itself. I've always in my clinical, like not as a clinician, but working at the clinics, I've always thought that it sold itself in those because of that, saying, hey,
Yeah.
just why not? I mean, if you've tried these, like you're mentioning, why wouldn't I try
Mhm.
something like this? High
Yeah.
efficacy, no side effects. I'm in.
Yeah, for sure. No, like I
Yeah.
said, it's like I feel like we're on the precipice of a human evolution to some extent. And the
Hmm.
biggest part of that will be going from the no because to the yes and. And so
Mm.
I think TMS is like really one of the harbingers of that in
Yeah, it's
medicine,
true.
because the evidence-based studies speak for themselves, with all the insurance covering it pretty much.
Hmm.
And like I said, there's ancient wisdom to support the usage of frequency healing
Yeah.
modalities, and that's ultimately what TMS is.
Yeah, that's so cool that you brought that up. I
Yeah.
did a summit for the last company I was with. We did uh a kind of a caring for physicians summit. So we had all these amazing speakers come and there's about 600 physicians in the for the summit, and one of them was she was a singer
Mm.
and sound healer. She was just absolutely amazing, but it reminded me of that, how she was talking about the frequencies and all of these different things. And yeah, there's just so much power to it. And it's very, like you said, there's so much, it's almost primal, like what we maybe used to do back then, the chanting and the singing and the instruments that we would use throughout our the human history and cultures and whatnot. So
Yeah,
yeah, I
absolutely.
never thought of that, of like of TMS being in that
Right.
same world, but you're right, it
Yeah.
is within that. Yeah, that's really cool.
Hmm.
Have you found, or I know you found some of this, what are the most common misconceptions about TMS that you've encountered along the way? Maybe people calling in and getting their first
Yeah.
introduction to TMS. What's the biggest
For
misconceptions?
Well, I mean, the biggest fear that people have is it's going to hurt, and it really
Hmm.
doesn't for most everyone. And then, there can be like a little, it feels like it's tapping on your scalp or something. And so when they normally try it out, they're like, oh, I was afraid of that actually hurting, and obviously that didn't hurt. And so I think that's a big misconception that can be painful. That being said, like I think as you crank up the frequency, sometimes there is like more of a headache for some people, but it's definitely not as uncomfortable as some people are afraid of it being.
Hmm.
Some people put it in the same camp as like electroconvulsive therapy. I'm like,
Right.
ooh,
Yeah.
we're far away from that.
Yeah.
Having been trained in both modalities, like ECT, you're putting people under full anesthesia, you're paralyzing them, and then you're elucidating a seizure. We're not doing any of those things. And ECT can be really helpful, and it's kind of barbaric, and like a lot of people, like really smart people, end up a lot of memory loss issues. And obviously, we
Hmm.
don't have that with TMS either. We have more human optimization. So people actually have shown increased cognizance, awareness, and that sort of thing. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Other thing I think is, you have to do these other things for it to work. And you really don't. Like, you just, as long as you show up,
Yeah.
chances are pretty good it's going to do something for you.
Yeah.
And so I think that was another popular misconception. And then another misconception is that people, they have to do a lot of other things to qualify for it. And really, a lot of people have tried like Lexapro or sertraline or Zoloft or, some other therapy sessions in the past. And, they notice they're just kind of stuck, doing all these other things like going to the gym and social connection and, whatever else, like eating healthy. And they're just keeping their head out of water. Theyey're surviving, they aren't thriving.
Mm,
You check
mm,
a PHQ-9 on these people and you're like, oh, actually, you're not as good of a head place as you're
mm.
trying to make yourself out to be.
Yeah.
Kind of stuck, like trying to fill up your cup from below, right? It's
Yeah.
like not very
Yeah.
sustainable. And
Yeah.
so, a lot of more people actually have this available to them as a treatment modality than they're probably aware of. And so, most people like think that TMS is pretty heavy hitter as far as like, I need to be like pretty sick to
True.
get it. And
Yeah.
that's another misconception that is
Mm.
not accurate.
That's a good one. Yeah. Yeah, I was traveling and I was speaking with I forget what specialty he was. He was a doctor, just chit-chatting, and yeah, he thought the same thing. He's like, "Oh, so I just thought that was like, people had to be really bad off, like almost, admitted, that kind of a thing before they'd even attempt TMS." And I was like, "No, no, no, that's a misconception. It's not that evasive. I think that for a long time, it was because of the cost, it was expensive back in the day. So insurance companies would much rather try, something else before they paid that much for TMS. But now the machines are getting more affordable. It's just getting more widely used and all of that. So, and we've seen this. We've seen that the medications used to be 4 to 6 pharmaceuticals, plus therapy and all of this stuff. And now it's 2 to 4, which is that's a huge difference, right? Two two pharmaceuticals, and then you go ahead and get approved. We see things like TRICARE. We see insurances like TRICARE, Medicare with no prior auth. So these are huge steps. Um, And then, yeah, you and I were looking at the multiple sessions per day being covered,
Yeah, that was
coming
super cool to see that.
in July. So all of these are moving towards more frequency, wider populations being able to get this treatment, and it just having it a more common treatment overall, like
Mhm.
in the space. So yeah, that's great.
Yeah, I know that was super cool seeing that from Medicare, being
Yeah.
able to say, hey, that you can build two of the 90868s a day, which is, the subsequent TMS. And
Mm-hmm.
so being able to do that like in a morning and an afternoon, like most people who've been suffering with depression for a while, they're pretty secure in the routine. And being able to do that twice a day, and and then be financially feasible. People can do multiple treatments a day, like up to five, I think, or 10, or even 15 of the theta burst, which is like the shortened protocol. You
Mm-hmm.
talked about pretty well, but being able to expedite the standard 36-day protocol into 3.5 weeks, like that's amazing, because
Mm-hmm.
people are going to notice improvements faster. Clinics are going to be able to increase access. Like there's a lot of wonderful things about that. So I was very energized to see that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Of course, Stanford is doing the Saint protocol, which is like 10 sessions a day. I've been lucky enough to be at one of the clinics. There's only 6 clinics offering that right now to do the actual tradition, like the actual protocol um with Stanford involved and all of that. And yeah, it's exciting to see, multiple sessions a day. And obviously those things are not covered yet. But it'd be great once they do get covered, because yeah, you can come in and get, your full treatment done in a couple of weeks or maybe one week, but definitely safely within a few weeks. So yeah, it's
Yeah,
great. It's
how awesome is that?
moving in
Yeah,
that direction.
absolutely.
Um,
Fired up for that.
How about for you, like as a provider, like so you went from obviously like everybody, and for all things, we don't know anything about anything, and then we start to learn
Right.
about it, and then we start to learn more, and then we take the plunge. So for you as a provider, what are maybe some misconceptions that you kind of had early on compared to the reality of now offering TMS at your clinic?
Yeah. So one of my um, great mentors, Jay Collier, I followed him at the Flagstaff Medical Center. Really cool psychiatric provider, awesome dude. And he was fired up on TMS a while back. And so, I guess I drank the Kool-Aid a while ago. But prior to that, probably some of my concerns were, there's some placebo effect with that. Like, I think a lot of providers still have that, where you're telling people you're doing something and it's kind of snake oily,
Mm-hmm.
and then you actually look at the science of it and you look at the stimulation, you're like, oh, okay, well, there's that's negated. And I've been
Mm-hmm.
down the rabbit hole for a while, so I'm sure
Right,
there's still a
right.
lot of clinicians that still have those misconceptions about, oh, like, well, yeah, anyone's going to be less depressed if they get to hang out with a human being who's engaged and talkative to them and they aren't on their digital devices for half an hour a day
Mm-hmm.
for 6 weeks. Like you're actually getting out of the house. There's a lot of things there, and
Right.
that probably does work in concurrence at least a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And having just the stimulation by itself is as an incredible benefit to so many. And I'm sure with the amount of human beings providing it, not everyone's amazing. Probably a lot of people are playing with their phone, while the patient's just sitting there nodding off. So, and they're still getting amazing benefits. So yeah, I think probably the snake oil is the biggest like misconception, because it's obviously not true.
Yeah.
Coming from what you don't know, what you don't know, like you said, right?
Yeah.
And then like how easy it is, like it really is. If you're following the measurement protocols and guidelines and you're making sure the cap fits well, it doesn't have to be scary to provide it. Like you're like, oh, look at the seizure, I got this magic wand that I'm gonna mess this
Yeah.
person up with. And
Yeah.
then you do just a couple treatments, you're like, oh, this isn't so bad. And
That's
you know,
true.
the blossom is so accessible. I think some of the machines like the brains away, where you're pushing it down, you're kind of like in this kind of a electrocution device looking thing where, you know,
Yeah.
so I shouldn't be
Yeah.
synonymizing that with it, because I looked in that one. And you know, I think there's great outcomes with all the TMS machines if you read
Hmm.
into them.
Hmm.
And you know, just having the wand, you know, just on the side of the head, you know, gentle pressure, and nice comfy chair, because we got the chair too that went with it. And I think, you know, most people like that as a massage function. And
Yeah.
neck support, all the bells and whistles, and nice Italian leather. I'm like, ooh, this is nice. I just want to sit in here on my time off.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and I think a lot of the providers, I don't know about yourself, but like when you first hear about the MT, like getting the motor threshold determined and the thumb to move and the location right and the intensity right, it can feel, oh wow, like that's a lot, like I gotta get right. But then yeah, in practice it's pretty easy, you know?
Yeah,
So
absolutely. Yeah, it really isn't that scary. You know, and you're right though. Like the first time you do it, you're like, what? Like, and then, you know, I think that negates all of your concerns about the snake oil too. When you start seeing like the thumb move, you're like, oh,
yeah,
okay, like this is
that's
official.
true.
This is legit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for the patients too, when they see their thumb move. Because there's other units, like I know when I was there, I talked to you about this, some stuff, but there's other things online where they say this is better than TMS and do it at home. And then you look, it's a 9-volt battery. And
Right.
so the misconception there is that that's not TMS, everybody. Like TMS
Yeah.
goes 3 centimeters into the brain. And yeah, when you see the thumb move, you're like, wow, this is something that's obvious. Yeah, it's getting into my brain, like for
Mm,
real. Yeah, and I also think about like the placebo and stuff. Correct me if I'm wrong, not as I'm not a clinician, but if that was the case, it wouldn't have such a long-lasting effect. I could see it
right.
working like in the treatment period or for 36
Yeah.
sessions even or something, but then as it continues to work, 12 months longer than that, and it
Mm.
really remaps what's going on in the brain. I don't think that the sham would work for that long, you know.
Right, right, yeah, exactly.
They
And you
keep
know, like the
going.
placebo effect is a really good thing that potentiates a lot of things. You know, it's got a
Hmm.
bad rap, but basically the placebo's effect dumbed down is saying your body's natural healing ability,
Mm.
right? And
Hmm.
so when, like
True.
I tell people, you know, all the time when they're in the pucker state, the fight, flight, or freeze, when
Hmm.
they're able to get out of that, then their natural healing abilities come along anyways, you know. So you see
Right.
a lot of people with like their ACEs scores, you know, their adverse childhood experience scores is like 5 or above. And you see
Mm.
this chronic inflammatory illness, you know, see a lot of Crohn's disease, see a lot of like
Mm.
fibromyalgia, see a lot of like autoimmune disorders. And then, like, you know, with the ketamine and been offering as long as we have, and imagine based on the treatment response we're seeing so far, the TMS, and a lot of people are using it in concurrence.
Hmm.
We see like, you know, this kind of downstream effect where a lot of those inflammatory biomarkers go down because you're actually
Yeah.
not living in that. And then your body's like, oh, I can take a breath. Like, oh,
Yeah.
okay, like my natural killer cells are back online. My lymphocytes and
Mm.
macrophages are doing their jobs. Like I'm not like in this inflamed state where I got to
Yeah.
get away from everything seems potentially traumatizing. And so
Yeah.
not having that is a pretty valuable thing. I know TMS does that too, where you kind of, like you said, literally remap the mind. So you don't
Hmm.
have to, you know, hold on to all those things that don't necessarily serve you. And yeah,
Right. Right.
obviously the duration of the effectiveness, you know, the that's the durability, you know, of a treatment
Hmm.
is very robust. Like I have a friend and partner in some of my business ventures. He's a military veteran, and he went through TMS, and he was dealing with this kind of chronic suicidality.
Mm.
And he's okay with me sharing this.
Yeah.
And then he went through a round of TMS, and he hasn't had any suicidality
Hmm.
since that course of TMS finished. And so, I mean, that's a great testament for TMS
Yeah.
service right there, you know.
And it's so wonderful, seeing that over and over and over again. So I've been, around TMS for over 10 years now, full time, TMS technician for 7 years, and seeing this over and over and over and over again, like you mentioned, the suicide ideations and just the characteristics and symptoms of depression being lifted. And you just get a lot of confidence in it. You're like, wow, this is really cool. Like, and yeah, again, mm, very little side effects at all. So it's wonderful to see that over and over again. Um,
Absolutely. So it's such rewarding work, right? When you start seeing
yeah.
people,
Oh, very,
yeah,
very. You really feel like, yeah, you're living your best life. And it's like,
right,
I want to do something where I'm helping people. It's kind of like, I don't know. I think it's like most people's dream, like it's
right.
easy or cliche or something, but it's like, but it's true. Like you really feel that, because it's so drastic sometimes. Like 6 weeks is not long. And then you have
Hmm.
somebody who is not feeling well at all. And then in 6 weeks time to make that shift, it's pretty incredible sometimes. Obviously not everyone's so extreme. It's not always like that
Hmm.
and doesn't work for everybody. But yeah, you really do feel like the lion's share of the patients coming through are definitely feeling that lift. There's that
Hmm.
there's a few days within the treatment period usually where you just feel that it's
Hmm.
lifted, but it's interesting because, not to get off track here, but it feels like almost like a negation of. So it's not like a bliss where I think a lot of the patients think it is going to be like a bliss where like I'm happy. It's really like, oh, where did it go? Where did depression go? It's not here. It's like a negation. You know what I mean? So
Uh-huh.
it's just
Yeah.
interesting. They're like,
There's
did I
this
have depression
monkey
when I
on my
came in?
back. I feel like there was a monkey there.
Yeah.
And I don't
Yeah,
feel
like you were
good.
really depressed when you came in. They're like, yeah, I was, huh? You're like,
Right.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, just a couple more questions for you. You hit upon
Mhm.
this a little bit already, but what are you most excited about in the future of TMS? Where would you like it to go? Obviously, like you said, you've been around it for a while and drank the Kool-Aid a while ago, and you're hip to some of the new stuff coming out and all that. But what are you excited about with
I think it's
TMS?
already happening, just the increased availability, I think
Yeah.
that's huge just because we want, more people to remember that they're capable of living a better
Mm,
life,
yeah.
and the TMS is a great way to fast track that for people. And it isn't scary, people are like, what? I can come in and just drive myself to and from. And, like 6 weeks later, there's a probability that I'm feeling a world away from where I'm feeling right now. Like that's going to be huge for people, and like pretty much everyone can navigate that. You just have to commit to it. And, being able to provide that to more people, I'm super excited about it. I think more and more accessible from an insurance payer perspective. Like you were saying, used to be like 4 to 8 meds, taking consistently at goal dosing, and now it's like 2 to 4 or less.
Hmm.
Where you don't even like you're prescribed to them, and you have like 2 or 5 days of intolerable side effects. You're like, I'm not taking this, and
Right.
that's enough for
Hmm.
the payers to be like, okay, well, like the last time they had maybe risk of serotonin syndrome and they had to go in, because they were prescribed an SSRI that they responded to very poorly. And so
Right,
we
right.
probably don't want to do that to them again. And, they seem like a good candidate for.
TMS, and it's really great to see people come through and do well with TMS when they've been through the gambit of the traditional medications without much of any improvements. It's incredibly rewarding work, and I'm very happy to be part of this. And thanks for taking the time today, Casey. I really appreciate you. If you or a loved one has been suffering with depression for some time and has tried some traditional modalities and has not noticed improvements, you may be a good candidate for TMS. Try reaching out to our ketamine clinic, Revitalize Ketamine Clinic, in either Flagstaff or Prescott Valley, and we can work together with you and your loved ones to see if you may benefit from TMS. Rapid TMS, rapid transcranial magnetic stimulation, used for treatment resistant depression with great efficacy here at Revitalize. Thank you and make it a great day.